In the beginning, the world of gods and men was divided by power and mystery. On lofty Mount Olympus, Zeus ruled as king, guarding the order of heaven and earth. His thunderbolts were symbols of authority. His voice carried the law of the divine, but not all agreed with his vision of balance and control. Among the ancient titans, one figure stood apart: Prometheus. He was not driven by conquest or pride, but by foresight and compassion. While many titans raged against the Olympians, Prometheus chose another path. He turned his gaze toward the fragile beings called humans. Mankind lived in shadows, huddled against the cold, their lives short and uncertain. They lacked warmth, protection, and the tools to rise beyond mere survival. Prometheus watched with sympathy, believing they deserved more than weakness and fear. He saw in them a spark of potential, a reflection of the divine spirit. And so began a silent conflict, not of weapons or war, but of vision and destiny, between Zeus, the guardian of order, and Prometheus, the giver of hope. At the heart of their struggle burned fire, the light of knowledge itself. Long before the world we know took shape, there was chaos, an endless void from which all things would one day be born. From this emptiness rose the Titans, mighty beings who ruled the earth, the sky, and the seas. Cronus, their leader, seized power from his father Uranus and brought an age of fear and uncertainty. Warned that one of his children would overthrow him, Cronus devoured each child as soon as they were born. But fate cannot be denied. Rhea hid away her youngest son, Zeus, and gave Cronus a stone instead. Cronus swallowed the stone, believing his throne secure, while Zeus was raised in secret by the earth. When grown, Zeus rose against Cronus, freed his siblings, and began the great war, the Titanomachy. The battle shook the world. Mountains crumbled, oceans raged, and the very sky trembled with fury. At last, Zeus and his allies triumphed. The Titans were cast into Tartarus, bound in endless shadow. The Olympians claimed dominion. Zeus became king. Poseidon took the sea, Hades the underworld. Mount Olympus shone as the seat of the new gods, while the memory of Titans lingered like thunder. Yet not all Titans opposed the Olympians. Some chose another path, among them Prometheus, the foresighted. Prometheus allied with Zeus, sparing himself from punishment. Yet his heart turned toward fragile mankind. He watched mortals stumble in darkness, shivering in caves, prey to storm and winter. Fragile but enduring, the Olympians dismissed them as fleeting shadows. But Prometheus saw curiosity and imagination in their eyes. Here began a conflict not of weapons, but of vision between Zeus, who guarded order, and Prometheus, who saw hope. The world was reborn, the stage set for the struggle over fire and knowledge. Prometheus was no ordinary Titan, for his gift of foresight set him apart from kin who clung to pride or bitterness. Where others saw only the present, he looked ahead, into consequences and destiny. During the Great War, his foresight guided him. He saw that resisting Zeus was futile, and the Olympians would rise. So he allied with Zeus, ensuring survival and earning a place among the victors. Though ambition was not his aim, Prometheus did not crave thrones or spoils. His heart turned instead toward humankind, fragile but resilient. He watched mortals huddled in caves, threatened by hunger and storm, their nights endless and cold. Their food was raw and bitter, their shelters crude, their lives short and uncertain. The Olympians looked down on them with disdain. Zeus saw them as fleeting shadows, destined to vanish. But Prometheus believed within humankind lay seeds of greatness, waiting only to be nurtured. In their eyes, he saw questions. In their hands, he saw potential. In their hearts, he saw courage. Some Titans called him a traitor. Some gods mistrusted him. But Prometheus was unmoved by their doubts. His mind was sharp, his schemes clever. He was called a trickster, not for chaos, but for wit. One tale tells of a banquet where he deceived Zeus with two offerings, changing the order of sacrifice. It was a subtle defiance, granting mortals an advantage and deepening the tension between Titan and God. Yet the true gift he longed to give was fire not only warmth, but light, creation, and transformation. Zeus guarded fire jealously, fearing it would give mortals ambition and pride to challenge divine order. Prometheus saw fire not as danger, but destiny, the key to unlock humanity's potential and future. He resolved that one day, no matter the risk, he would bring fire to humankind. Thus, he stood at a crossroads. Titan and ally of Zeus, trickster and protector of men. Loved by mortals, mistrusted by gods, he carried quiet defiance that would shape the fate of the world. The battle over fire had not begun, but its seeds were planted in his mind, waiting for the spark. On Mount Olympus, Zeus sat upon his shining throne. In his hand, he held the thunderbolt, symbol of justice and command. To the gods, he was the unshakable center of power. To mortals, he was the voice of the sky, the bringer of storm and rain. Zeus had not risen by chance, but through battle and destiny. He overthrew Cronus, defeated the Titans, and forged order from chaos. The scars of war still shaped every choice he made. He believed only order could keep the world from ruin. Cronus had shown him what fear and prophecy could unleash. The Titans had shown him how ambition turned to destruction. So Zeus became vigilant, guarding Olympus with unyielding will. To the Olympians, his rule gave safety and balance. Each god found their place: Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld, others their realms. Their vast powers still bowed to Zeus, bound by loyalty and law. To mortals, Zeus was distant and fearsome. They trembled at lightning, prayed for mercy, and offered sacrifices. For Zeus gave rain to bless the fields, but storms to destroy them. He lifted kings and heroes, yet punished arrogance without mercy. To him, humans must remain humble, fragile, dependent on the divine. If they reached too high, hubris would consume them. And hubris, Zeus knew, always ended in downfall. So he set limits upon humankind. They could toil and dream, but not grasp every gift. Fire remained sacred, a spark of divine creation itself. In mortal hands, it would lead to pride and rebellion. Zeus gazed from the clouds at humanity below. He saw them shivering in the cold, struggling with crude tools. His heart stirred with pity, but he held firm. Mortals must remain dependent, or they would rise too far. Yet he knew some gods looked kindly on mankind. Prometheus, clever and bold, watched them with sympathy. Zeus wondered if that Titan might someday defy him, but he trusted his throne, his thunder, his authority. No scheme of mortals or Titan could break Olympus. The world belonged to the gods, and Zeus ruled above all. Still, tension brewed like a storm on the horizon. Zeus sought to preserve order. Prometheus dreamed of progress. One guarded fire, the other longed to share it. Neither had moved, but the line was drawn. High on Olympus, Zeus waited, vigilant and resolute. Far below, Prometheus already carried a burning plan. A clash of visions was approaching, and in that clash, the fate of humankind would be decided. Far below Olympus, mortals lived fragile lives in silence and struggle. Their shelters clung to forests, weak against storms and the endless forces of nature. Unlike the gods, humans knew no certainty of tomorrow. Each sunrise was a blessing, each night a burden of fear. They had no fire to drive back the cold or light the dark. The sun warmed them by day, but shadows swallowed the earth at night. Families huddled close, shivering beneath branches and firs, afraid of unseen dangers. Wolves howled, winds roared, and mortals trembled in their smallness. Food was raw, grain bitter, meat tough, for they lacked the sacred flame. Hunger gnawed at their bodies, weakness clung to their bones. Yet they endured with resilience that surprised even the gods. They shaped stone into sharper tools, reeds into baskets, and hunted together. Their hands were clumsy, but their imagination was alive. Voices carried stories, memories passing from one generation to the next. The gods looked down with amusement or indifference. To many, mortals were sparks of dust, vanishing too quickly to matter. But Prometheus saw beginnings, a flame waiting to ignite. Children laughed in the cold, Hunters braved storms. Mothers sang for hope. In these fragile acts, Prometheus saw courage and a touch of the divine. Zeus, however, looked with caution and authority. To him, mortals were fragile, prone to folly and arrogance. If given too much, they would grow proud and challenge Olympus. So fire remained forbidden, a sacred flame of creation. It burned only in the halls of the gods and the lightning of Zeus. Mortals saw it only in fleeting sparks when storms struck trees. They could not keep it, nor shape it, and lived in shadow. Prometheus walked among them in thought, moved by their struggle. He listened to their cries, saw their yearning for more. Why must they suffer in shadows when flame could lift them higher? Olympus gleamed with gold, feasts, and laughter of immortals. But below, hunger and cold ruled the lives of men. The imbalance weighed heavy on Prometheus, stirring defiance. Was Zeus guarding order or only guarding fear? What is power if it does not protect the weak? What is wisdom if it remains hoarded in heaven? These questions burned in Prometheus's heart. He knew if fire stayed with Zeus, mankind would crawl in dust. But if fire was shared, humanity would rise in strength. Zeus saw risk. Prometheus saw hope. Between them stretched a gulf as wide as the heavens. For now, mortals whispered prayers to gods who rarely answered. They burned dried grass that died quickly, pressed close for warmth. Unaware of the storm above, they carried on. But Prometheus had chosen his path in silence. The suffering of mortals had lit a fire within him, not of wood, but of compassion and defiance. And once such a flame begins, no god can truly contain it. The story of fire carried weight in Olympus. To the gods, flame was creation itself, a sacred force that shaped worlds. In its glow lay the power to build, to transform, to destroy. It was too potent to leave in mortal hands. For Zeus, fire meant order, contained within the heavens. His thunderbolts blazed with it. His rule shone because of it. To him, fire was a weapon of balance, proof of divine power. Mortals could pray, toil, and sacrifice, but never wield such force. Prometheus, however, saw fire differently. Where Zeus saw danger, he saw destiny. Flame was not threat but bridge, a gift to lift mankind. With fire, humans could cook, forge tools, survive the night. Without it, they would always shiver in shadows. The debate between Zeus and Prometheus was silent but sharp. Zeus kept the flame locked in Olympus's hearths. Prometheus kept his eyes fixed on humankind below. Seasons passed, and mortals suffered through winter winds. Crops froze, hunger spread, and children cried in the dark. Hunters returned empty-handed, too frail to face storms. Prometheus felt their pain as though it was his own. The question grew louder in his heart each day. Was it right for gods to hoard what could save lives? Other gods offered no answer. Some mocked mortals as shadows, weak and unworthy. Others ignored them, lost in feasts and rivalries. But Prometheus could not look away. His foresight showed him mankind was destined for more. Yet their destiny remained chained without the spark of fire. Zeus remembered the war with Titans and their ambition. Power, he knew, always bred rebellion. If mortals held fire, they might rise in hubris. And hubris demanded punishment. Prometheus saw the risk, but embraced it. Without risk, no growth could come. Denying mortals fire was denying their future. In mortal hands, flame would awaken invention and courage. It would kindle strength beyond mere survival. The question of fire was now philosophical. It was control against compassion. Zeus sought order, absolute and unyielding. Prometheus sought hope, trusting humanity's spark. He stood torn between loyalty to Zeus and love for mankind. He remembered siding with Zeus in the Great War, but loyalty to justice pulled harder than loyalty to Olympus. Each lightning strike reminded him of the flame trapped within. Each shiver of mortals made the absence unbearable. The choice was no longer whether men deserved fire. It was whether gods deserved to keep it from them. The question of fire burned quietly between Zeus and Prometheus. For Zeus, it meant order. For Prometheus, it meant hope. And in the silence between them, the world waited, unaware that the greatest gift and greatest conflict was about to begin. The night on Olympus was silent, the moonlight casting silver shadows across the halls of the gods. The sacred fire burned in bronze braziers, flickering with divine strength. Prometheus lingered near the hearth, his heart restless, his thoughts heavy. He had watched mortals shiver in caves, weak and hungry, for far too long. He knew fire could change everything, but it was forbidden. To act was to defy Zeus, to risk thunder and wrath, yet to remain silent was to abandon mankind. Prometheus whispered to himself, "What is foresight if it cannot act?" The gods were distracted, feasting in their marble halls. Zeus sat proud on his throne, thunderbolts at rest. No one noticed Prometheus moving quietly into the chamber of fire. In his hand, he carried a hollow fennel stalk, simple and strong. It was humble, yet perfect to hide a burning ember. The flames glowed fiercely, alive, as though warning him. Prometheus hesitated, remembering Zeus's power. But he thought of mortals trembling in the dark. His choice was made. Compassion outweighed fear. He bent the stalk to the flame, catching a glowing ember. It pulsed within, small yet eternal, like a living heart. Prometheus shielded it close, guarding the fragile spark. The theft was complete. He left the halls unseen, slipping into the silent night. The ember burned faintly, hidden, but destined to blaze. As he descended the mountain, the air grew colder, yet warmth traveled with him, carried in secret. Below, mortals huddled in caves, their faces pale with despair. They prayed to gods who never answered. Prometheus stepped among them, the stalk glowing faintly. They feared him, but he spoke gently. "Do not fear, this is hope." He placed the ember on dry wood and leaves. Smoke rose, then flame roared, golden and alive. The people gasped, their eyes wide in wonder. The warmth touched their skin. The light filled their darkness. Children laughed, sparks dancing in the air. For the first time, mankind held power in their hands. Prometheus watched, pride and fear mingling in his chest. He had given them hope, but broken Zeus's law. Above, Olympus stirred, shadows shifting in silence. The balance had changed forever. The flame once bound to gods now burned in mortal hearts, and nothing would ever be the same again. The first flames flickered high in the caves of humankind. At first, mortals stared in awe, unsure whether to fear or embrace it. The fire hissed and snapped, alive like a creature of its own. Slowly, trembling hands reached closer, and wonder replaced fear. Night was no longer endless, for the flames pushed back the dark. Where silence had ruled, now warmth and courage began to grow. Families gathered together, drawn by the light of a common fire. With flames, they cooked their food and felt strength in every meal. The warmth softened roots and meat, turning hunger into comfort. The taste of cooked food became more than survival, it was hope. Fire became their shield against beasts prowling in the night. Torches blazed, and wild eyes retreated before the light. No longer helpless, mortals stood stronger against their fears. Around the hearth, stories grew, whispered into songs and dreams. The fire gave them a center, a place to share and belong. Prometheus watched smoke rise across valleys, a sign of change. His heart swelled with pride at the sight of courage ignited. Children learned to feed embers, keeping the flame alive. Hunters forged sharper tools, glowing in the fire's heat. Farmers warmed fields, protecting crops from the cruel frost. With fire, people no longer bowed to the seasons. They had choice. They had strength. They had direction. Prometheus knew fire was only the beginning. It would awaken invention, courage, and thirst for knowledge. Humanity would rise, carried by the spark he had given. But in Olympus, smoke in the sky told another story. Zeus's eyes turned toward earth, watching mortal fires spread. He saw not joy, but rebellion. Not hope, but a challenge to his order. The balance between gods and men had shifted. Prometheus's gift had awakened both humanity and suspicion. Mortals, unaware, only knew warmth and courage. They laughed, they danced, they lived without fear of the dark. Their cold world had transformed into light and life. Prometheus stood between Olympus and earth, torn in silence. He felt pride, yet knew Zeus would not ignore defiance. The gift was no longer survival, it was rebellion. The flames leapt on cave walls, shaping shadows of gods and beasts. Mankind had stepped onto a path of no return. The fire was no longer a secret. It was a revolution, and it had just begun. The story of Prometheus did not end with chains and fire. It lived on like a shadow, etched into the destiny of gods and mortals alike. On the mountain peaks, the wind carried whispers of his defiance. Every gust was a reminder that no god's rule was unshakable. Yet for ages, Zeus ensured that no rescue would ever come. Each morning, the eagle returned, talons sharp and eyes burning. It tore into the titan's flesh, devouring the liver that grew back at night. The cycle was endless, the agony without mercy. But Prometheus endured through every scream, every wound. Even in torment, he clung to the knowledge of his gift to mankind. His body suffered, but his will remained unbroken. Far below, humanity flourished with fire. Villages grew into cities, cities into kingdoms of light. The warmth of flame and the strength of steel carried his mark. The Titan's pain had birthed a future far beyond Zeus's plan. The gods watched as mortals grew stronger with fire. Hera feared their arrogance and rising pride. Athena admired their ingenuity and creativity. Ares laughed at their wars, fought with burning weapons. Still, Zeus's fury never cooled with time. To him, Prometheus was more than a chained rebel. He was a reminder of defiance, a scar on Zeus's pride. Zeus ruled Olympus, but Prometheus ruled imagination. And imagination is a dangerous, untamable force. It cannot be chained or silenced by thunder. It spreads like fire from one heart to another. Centuries passed, and mortals told the Titan's tale. Some praised him as a hero of fire. Others pitied him as a fool condemned to pain. But all knew, without him, mankind would remain in darkness. Prometheus became a symbol carved in chains. His agony was the price of progress. His flame was a beacon of resistance. His defiance, a lesson in sacrifice. Yet prophecy whispered he would not suffer forever. One day, a hero would come to set him free. That hero was destined to be Heracles, son of Zeus. Even Zeus could not escape the weave of fate. For destiny binds even the greatest of gods. Prometheus's tale became more than myth. It became a mirror for gods and mortals alike. It raised questions no thunderbolt could answer. What is the worth of suffering for others? What is the cost of defying power for freedom? Can one act of rebellion shape the world? The fire burned on in human hands. It lit homes, fueled wars, and forged dreams. It could destroy, yet also create anew. Such was the double-edged gift of Prometheus. On his lonely peak, he bore agony and triumph. Every scream was a hymn of resistance. Every drop of blood, a seed of freedom. The eagle returned each day, but so did mankind's gratitude. They remembered the Titan who gave them fire. They carried his story across generations. In every flame, they saw sacrifice and defiance. Prometheus's torment was eternal, but so was his victory. In every flicker of fire, his spirit burned. The gods may rule Olympus from their heights, but Prometheus rules the human spirit forever. And in that spirit, his defiance lives eternal. High upon his lonely peak, Prometheus remained in chains. His body was bound, but his spirit refused to break. The gods believed his torment would last forever. Yet fate wove another story into the silence. For Prometheus carried a secret Zeus feared. It was not about fire, nor mankind. It was a prophecy, whispered long ago by Gaia. Prometheus alone knew its truth and guarded it. The prophecy spoke of a son born of Zeus. This son would rise greater than his father. He was destined to shake Olympus itself, and perhaps challenge the throne of the gods. Prometheus had heard Gaia's warning clearly. She told of danger if Zeus grasped too much power. Zeus feared this truth and bound Prometheus tighter. He thought pain would break the Titan's silence. But Prometheus never revealed the prophecy. Though the eagle tore at him daily, he endured. His agony became a shield for the secret. To speak it aloud would empower Zeus. To keep it hidden was defiance itself. below, mankind thrived, unaware of this storm. They told tales of the Titan who suffered. His chains became a symbol of resistance. His silence became a lesson in strength. For in endurance, there is hidden power. Meanwhile, Zeus grew restless on Olympus. He ruled with thunder, yet feared prophecy. He worried betrayal might come from his own child. Hera watched his paranoia with cold suspicion. Athena counseled patience, but Zeus ignored her. Prometheus's suffering gnawed at Zeus's pride. The Titan's silence reminded him of his limits. If one chained rebel could endure forever, what might Zeus's own son someday accomplish? The gods whispered uneasily among themselves. Some pitied Prometheus, others mocked him. But all knew fate could not be avoided. No thunderbolt could strike down destiny. And so, prophecy and punishment intertwined. Prometheus bore fire for mankind and silence for gods. The eagle's wings darkened the sky each morning. Its beak tore, but Prometheus still endured. He endured because he carried the secret. He endured because silence was his victory. In that silence, prophecy waited patiently. One day, it would be fulfilled. One day, Zeus's throne would tremble. And when that day came, chains would shatter. Prometheus was more than the giver of fire. He was the keeper of a secret too great to reveal. And secrets, once revealed, can change the world. As Prometheus suffered, the halls of Olympus grew uneasy. The gods, though immortal, were not blind to what unfolded below. They watched mankind thrive with the stolen fire. Villages glowed like stars scattered across the earth. Smoke curled upward from countless hearths into the sky. Bread baked, fires crackled, and voices filled the air. With fire, humans forged tools and shaped iron. They built ships that sailed across endless seas. No longer fragile, they had become creators and dreamers. But ambition soon followed in fire's footsteps. Torches lit battles. Spears glowed red in war. Mortals now fought not for survival, but for power. To Hera, this was arrogance that must be checked. To Ares, it was glory sung in battle cries. To Athena, it was intelligence shaping destiny. Each god saw their own domain reflected in mankind. But Zeus saw only a challenge to Olympus. From his throne, he watched with thunder at hand. He feared humans might rise beyond their place. What if one day they stopped bowing to gods? Prometheus's chains became symbols of defiance. His silence shouted louder than Zeus's thunder. Among the gods, whispers grew restless and sharp. Poseidon grumbled at mortals taming the seas. Demeter watched them harvest the fields in plenty. Artemis frowned at forests cut down for wood. Hephaestus admired sparks of invention in their hands. Olympus gathered in council under Zeus's gaze. He demanded loyalty and strict order over mortals. But the gods themselves were divided in their hearts. Some feared humanity's rise and growing strength. Others saw it as glory reflected upon Olympus. And always, Prometheus's name lingered unspoken. Freeing him meant admitting Zeus's weakness. Keeping him chained showed the limits of mercy. Meanwhile, on Earth, humans told another story. They spoke of Prometheus, who suffered for them. Around firesides, they whispered prayers in his name. Gratitude bound their hearts to the chained Titan. This troubled Zeus more than any war or flame. He could strike mortals with storms and floods, but he could not strike down their memory. Prometheus lived on in their stories and hope. The gods grew restless as the world changed, for fire had given mortals more than warmth. It gave them pride, imagination, and purpose. And imagination cannot be chained by thunder. Prometheus's chain rattled, echoing like prophecy. His suffering continued, yet his gift only grew. On Earth, fire crackled in every village hearth. Bright, defiant, eternal it burned against Olympus. The gods could only watch mankind's destiny unfold and wonder what fate awaited them all. The fire Prometheus gave was more than warmth. It was a spark of endless creativity, reshaping the destiny of humankind. At first, it was fragile, hidden in clay pots from Zeus's gaze. Soon, it grew into bonfires that lit the dark and united communities. For mortals once shivering in caves, fire was pure magic. It gave warmth, safety, and the courage to face the night. Flames drove away beasts and fear, stretching life beyond daylight. But fire was more than protection. It was a tool of creation. Mortals cooked their food, turning danger into nourishment. They softened metals, shaped stones, and crafted tools with precision. They baked clay into pottery, storing water and grain for survival. The fire sparked imagination and fueled endless possibility. Every ember whispered of new ways to build and dream. Around the fire, mortals gathered, shared stories, and found belonging. Strangers became neighbors. Neighbors became allies. And allies built societies. The fire was the heartbeat of human progress. But progress stirred Zeus's wrath on high. From Olympus, he watched mortals flourish beyond his will. They were no longer weak or dependent on the gods. They learned, created, and dreamed as never before. Prometheus's gift had made them powerful and bold. Zeus feared their ambition, feared their reach for the divine. Yet humanity could not return to darkness. The fire was too vital, too transformative, too deeply woven into life. It fueled speech, storytelling, and the birth of memory. Songs and wisdom spread like sparks from one flame to another. Though Prometheus suffered, mortals honored his sacrifice. Every hearth carried the weight of his defiance. Every ember echoed the Titan's courage. The dawn of innovation had begun. Zeus could not unmake what fire had inspired. Fragile mortals became resilient. Survival turned into progress. Existence transformed into civilization. Prometheus's belief in humanity became reality. The fire burned in their homes and in their hearts. It was the eternal spark of invention, defiance, and hope. Not just survival, but transformation. The journey of humankind had truly begun. Toward light, knowledge, and the unyielding pursuit of freedom. High on the Caucasus Mountains, Prometheus stood bound in chains. He was the Titan who gave fire to humankind, defying Zeus himself. Zeus's wrath was swift and merciless, for the act was unforgivable. It was not just fire that was stolen, but the power it symbolized. Prometheus had placed humanity's fate above the will of Olympus. For this, Hephaestus forged unbreakable chains to bind him to stone. The metal held him fast against storms, winds, and the march of time. Day after day, the sun revealed his suffering on the cliffs. Night after night, the stars bore witness to his endurance. Though bound, Prometheus remained unbound, his spirit still aflame. His punishment was cruel in its endless design. His body lay exposed to scorching suns and freezing winds. Every moment declared Zeus's power and Prometheus's defiance. Yet what made the punishment unbearable was its eternity. Prometheus was not sentenced for a season, but for all ages. And still, his mind remained sharp, his will unbroken. He had foreseen the risk, yet chosen hope for mankind. Where Zeus saw rebellion, Prometheus saw salvation. Though chained, his gift lived on in mortal hands. Every hearth, every tool, every story by firelight was his triumph. His sacrifice burned brighter than his pain. Humanity grew stronger, reaching farther with each generation. From his mountain prison, Prometheus felt their progress ripple outward. Though he was trapped, humanity was free. The punishment became a paradox, a legend in itself. Zeus meant it as warning, yet it became honor. Prometheus's chains became symbols of courage and endurance. His pain became the cost of humanity's freedom. The Titan never begged, never regretted, never cursed mankind. He endured, unyielding, with a silent fire in his heart. He knew the truth Zeus could not change. The flame could never be taken back. It was woven into humanity's destiny forever. In that truth, Prometheus found strength. High on the cliffs, bound but unbroken, he was free in spirit. His gift lived on, shaping the story of mankind. The gods could chain his body, but not silence his story. The fire still burned, and so Prometheus endured. While Prometheus suffered his endless torment, Zeus's anger burned on. He still sought revenge against mankind, the true beneficiaries of Prometheus's defiance. Zeus did not plan another punishment of chains or fire. Instead, he plotted a gift, beautiful, irresistible, but carrying hidden weight. From the clay of the earth, the gods shaped a woman unlike any other. She was Pandora, whose very name meant all gifted. Each god bestowed a blessing upon her. Athena gave her wisdom, Aphrodite gave her beauty, Hermes gave her cunning, and Zeus gave her the spirit of unyielding curiosity. When Pandora stood complete, she shone with divine grace. Her presence alone felt like a blessing to mortals. Yet in her hands, Zeus placed a sealed jar. It was mysterious, heavy, and forbidden. He warned her never to open it, though he knew she would. For curiosity is a fire that no command can fully contain. Pandora was sent down to earth as a gift to mankind. Men welcomed her with awe, entranced by her beauty and charm. Her voice was sweet as song, her presence disarming. They asked no questions about Zeus's generosity. How could a gift so radiant hide any curse? Yet the jar lingered, silent, untouched, but whispering to Pandora's heart. Day after day, her thoughts circled back to it. What was inside? Why had the gods entrusted it to her? Why give what must not be opened? The questions grew louder, more persistent, until, at last, she gave in. With trembling hands, she lifted the lid, and, in an instant, the world was changed forever. Dark shapes burst forth: sorrow, disease, toil, despair. They scattered into the air, racing across the earth. Where joy had flourished, grief took root. Where ease had reigned, hardship settled. Pandora, horrified, slammed the jar shut. But it was too late. The evils had escaped, spreading into mortal lives without end. Her gift had become their burden, their inescapable fate. And yet, all was not lost. For at the bottom of the jar, one thing remained. It glowed softly, unlike the shadows that had fled. It was hope. Though the world now bore suffering, it also held endurance. Hope gave strength to endure pain, to rebuild after loss. It gave humans courage to dream of brighter days. And so, humanity carried both suffering and hope together. Prometheus's fire gave progress. Pandora's jar gave struggle. Together, they defined the human condition. Growth through hardship, strength through endurance, light and shadow forever intertwined. Zeus watched from Olympus, satisfied with his plan. Mortals would forever bear the weight of sorrow. Yet even he could not erase hope from their grasp. And in hope, humans still carried a spark beyond the gods' control. Pandora's tale became a mirror of humanity itself. Every gift hides risk. Every light casts shadow. And in every shadow, hope still lingers. Thus, the world was changed not by fire or chains, but by curiosity, a single choice, and a jar that once opened could never be shut again. Even as the world adjusted to its burdens, a fragile balance began to emerge. Fire burned in mortal hands, shaping their lives, driving growth, and fueling progress. Yet from Pandora's jar, sorrow and hardship shadowed every step of that journey. At first, humans marveled at fire, grateful for Prometheus's daring gift. They used it to cook food, to ward off the night, and to gather in warmth. Villages grew into towns, and communities found strength in its glow. But the release of suffering was never far behind, whispering in the dark. With fire came ambition, and with ambition came conflict. Men forged tools, raised cities, and sought to master the earth. But they also quarreled over land, power, and destiny. Disease, famine, and sorrow spread across the world with silent weight. The balance tipped endlessly, flame against shadow, progress against pain. The gods watched from Olympus, amused, yet cautious. To Zeus, the plan had unfolded exactly as he intended. Mortals had fire, yes, but they carried the burden of Pandora's jar. For every spark of progress, there was a shadow of suffering. This ensured mortals would never rival the gods. Their victories would always be tempered by hardship and loss. But Zeus had not counted on one small, glowing survivor. Hope had remained in the jar, soft yet unyielding. It was not loud like fire, nor cruel like sorrow. Yet it endured. Hope whispered to farmers when crops failed, urging them to sow again. It comforted the sick, promising they would see the dawn. It gave courage to those who lost loved ones, teaching them to endure. Prometheus, bound in torment, saw this balance with sorrow and pride. His fire had changed humanity, as he had dreamed. They had become creators, builders and dreamers of new worlds. But he saw, too, the hardships they bore from Pandora's jar. Still, he believed struggle was not a curse, but a chance. Only through challenge could mortals learn resilience. Only through loss could they cherish joy. Fire gave them power, but hope gave them meaning. Around their fires, mortals told stories to explain their lives. They spoke of Prometheus, the titan who defied Zeus. They spoke of Pandora, whose curiosity loosed suffering on mankind. These myths became mirrors, guiding people through sorrow and triumph. Parents taught children that even in despair, hope endures. Elders reminded the young to wield fire with wisdom. The other gods, too, took notice of mortal resilience. Athena admired their hunger for knowledge and truth. Demeter pitied their toil but honored their perseverance. Even Hermes smiled at their cleverness and trade. Only Zeus remained guarded, wary of mortal ambition. The world was reshaped by fire, by sorrow, and by hope. Mortals were no longer clay in the hands of gods. They became beings of contradiction, strong yet vulnerable, burdened yet hopeful, flawed yet endlessly aspiring. The story of Prometheus and Pandora became the story of mankind, a story of fire, of shadow, and of the unbreakable spirit within. Zeus had tried to bind humanity with limits and burdens. Yet, through fire and hope, mortals found unexpected freedom. The freedom to endure, to create, to rise again. This was their inheritance, their burden, and their triumph. The balance of light and shadow remained across generations, and through it all, the flame of Prometheus burned on, steady and eternal, joined by the quiet glow of hope. As centuries passed, the tale of Prometheus and Pandora became more than myth. It became a thread woven into the fabric of human life. Each generation looked to the sky, imagining the gods on Olympus. And each generation found meaning in the struggle between fire and shadow. Fire was no longer just survival, it became creation. From the hearth to the forge, mortals used Prometheus's gift to shape their world. They carved tools, built temples, and lit torches to guide their way. With every spark, they carried a reminder of Prometheus's defiance. But with fire came responsibility, for Pandora's jar had ensured balance. Hardship walked beside progress, and every triumph carried a cost. Fields bloomed, yet storms destroyed. Families grew, yet loss visited. Kingdoms rose, yet conflicts followed. Humanity lived between light and shadow, hope and despair. Yet this balance did not weaken them, it defined them. Through struggle, they learned endurance. Through loss, they discovered love. Through hardship, they forged stories and wisdom for their children. Fire became more than a flame, it was a spark of knowledge. Philosophers asked questions of justice, truth, and life's meaning. These questions were embers of Prometheus's fire in thought and spirit. Knowledge spread like fire, leaping torch to torch. It ignited ideas, dreams, and discoveries across generations. From Olympus, Zeus still watched with wary eyes. He saw mortals falter, suffer, yet always rise again. They were never free of sorrow, but never without hope. He could not erase fire, nor silence resilience. Though Prometheus was bound, the human spirit was unbound. Prometheus became a symbol of sacrifice and defiance. His story reminded mortals that progress demands courage. Pandora, too, was more than blame. She embodied curiosity and choice. Her tale warned of danger, yet also of wonder in every gift. Together, their stories shaped how mortals saw themselves. The legacy of fire and knowledge became aspiration. Humanity dreamed of more than fields and walls. They reached for the stars, traced patterns in the heavens. They wondered what mysteries lay beyond the horizon. Fire symbolized discovery, unending questions, pursuit of wisdom, and always there was hope. A quiet flame, too small for gods to notice, yet too strong to ever be extinguished. Hope kept humanity moving forward through famine and sorrow. It taught them that tomorrow could be brighter, that the story was never finished. In truth, Zeus and Prometheus shaped more than fire. They defined the very condition of humanity. Fire brought progress. The jar brought suffering. But together, they gave resilience, creativity, and spirit. This is why their story has endured through the ages. It is not only a tale of gods and titans, it is the story of us all, our light, our shadow, our spark. The flame of Prometheus still burns in every hearth and idea. Pandora's jar still weighs heavy, but hope still whispers. And as long as fire and hope endure, humanity will rise again.